I call this story Our Duty. This is a story about duty not only as healthcare providers, to care for our patients, but also the duty of a son to his father and his family. Andy was one of my patients in one of the cavernous halls of the 8,000 bedder COVID 19 community care facility in May 2020. Together with his dad, mum, and sister, he was also diagnosed as being COVID positive in the early days of the pandemic. As each member of the family was infected about a week apart from each other, they were each dispatched to different facilities, with dad in one facility, mum and sister in another, and he had the misfortune of being cared for by me in a third facility. During my first chat with Andy, it was day 2 for him, day 8 for his mum and sister, and day 14 for his dad. In those days, COVID 19 positive patients would be isolated in care facilities for anything between 21 to 28 days. So the whole family had about a week to 2 weeks before they would be deemed well enough to be discharged. He confided that he understood that it was unfortunate that they were separated, but accepted that given capacity constraints at each facility, this was the most optimal solution for the entire family to get better faster. A couple of days later, during one of our chit-chat sessions, Andy was a dutiful son and he asked me whether I could check if the family could be moved and be isolated together in a single facility. In the midst of checking on the request, Andy and I received news separately that his dad had challenges breathing normally and had been transferred to the National Center for Infectious Diseases, better known as NCID, to better care for his COVID 19 condition. In the initial couple of days, it was challenging to get updates on the dad's condition and synchronize the updates between Andy, his family, and the care team in NCID. But as the info updates became more regular and as Andy was updated on his earlier request to house the family quickly adapted to the situation, despite this being an unfamiliar event within an already unfamiliar situation. It was great that despite the stresses and hectic environment, that the care team came together and cobbled up some time for the family to chat with the dad over WhatsApp for video calls. However, suddenly we were updated that the dad's condition had deteriorated significantly. The request to be cared for together was replaced by an urgent request by Andy and his wife to visit him at NCID. After multiple appeals and adjustments, we managed to convince the authorities that we had a sound plan to secure Andy and his wife in a bubble and transport them from their various facilities to NCID. So within 24 hours of receiving news of his dad's condition, we were ready to coordinate their visit. But that effort came to naught when we received the news that his dad had been put on life support. When Andy received the news, he was stoic. I got my deputy to replace me for my afternoon duties and I sat down with Andy as we coordinated WhatsApp video calls with the extended family through the care team to say goodbye. As I sat down with him, I shared that I had also just lost my dad, that he had passed away alone when he was overseas. I felt his angst and shared that the best we could do as the eldest child and the only sons was to do our duty as best we could. After all the farewells, I watched him say the final goodbye. Then I watched him make the call. I watched him put his head down and I put an arm on his shoulder. We sat there a while in silence. Duty done. After 2 years of managing COVID 19, new data is emerging that highlights some of the harms caused by these restrictions, ostensibly for fear infection. The harm caused impacts not only the families but also on the mental health of clinicians, caregivers, and patients. Morley states that clinicians and caregivers feel moral distress as they feel that it is not right to separate patients and their families. A study of ICUs in 49 Michigan hospitals conducted during the early stages of COVID 19 in May 2020 showed that restrictions to family visitations resulted in patients with higher rates of delirium and sedation requirements. Moving forward, we have adapted and instituted new measures to better care for our patients and their families. Our duty is a duty of care. If we as care providers do our full duty, the rest will take care of itself.